Hello, dear children. So, from today, we are going to start here with the third part of the chapter, The Enemy. So, children, as previously you have been told that Dr. Sadao and Hana had been expressing their love for each other, but then just at that moment, there was something that happened over there. So, what it was, just pay attention and try to understand. So, it was as at this moment that both of them saw something black come out of the mist. So at that moment, when they had been expressing their love for each other, as they had been holding the hands of each other, they saw something emerging out of the mist. They saw something emerging out of the cover of fog. So it was a man. So later on, as they gazed at the figure, they noticed that it was a man. So he was flung up out of the ocean. So initially they thought that probably he is a fisherman who has been flung out of the ocean, probably from his boat. So that is what struck up in their mind initially. कि जब वो एक दूसरे के प्रति अपना प्रेम जाहिर कर रहे थे, तो उन्होंने देखा कि कुछ धुंध में से निकल करके आ रहा है, उस कोहरे की चादर में से कुछ निकल करके आ रहा है, और ध्यान देने पर उन्होंने नोटिस किया कि ये तो लग रहा है कोई आदमी है। तो उन्हें लगा कि शायद ये कोई फिशरमैन वगैरह है जो अपनी बोट से गिर गया और तैर करके समुद्र में से बाहर आ रहा है। It seemed to his feet by a breaker that probably he has been flung out of the boat and he has fallen into the sea, and now on account of the force of the breaker means force of the waves, he has been pushed onto the shore. That is what they thought. He staggered a few steps, his body outlined against the mist. So the person was staggering. Staggering means that he was not able to walk properly, he was not able to move properly, and his body was outlined against the mist. That means that the body was reflecting sometime and then it was getting hidden the other time. It was just flickering, it was emerging and then again it was getting vanished. So that is what was happening over there, कि वो दिखाई देती थी उसकी बॉडी, फिर छिप जाती थी. His arms above his head. Then the curled mist hid him again. So in this way, his body was just appearing and getting disappeared time and again. So that is what was happening over there, कि वो आदमी उस धुंध में से निकल करके आ रहा था और दिखता था, फिर छिप जाता था, फिर दिखता था, फिर छिप जाता था. तो ऐसा ही वहां पे हो रहा था. Who's that? Hana cried. So children, as you have already been informed that Dr. Sadao and Hana were deeply involved with each other. And then just at that moment, there was the emergence of that shadow out of the mist. So now Hana was deeply shocked. Hana was entirely taken aback. She did not know what to do. She did not know how to react. And she just cried, "What is that? Kyari, ye kya hai?" She dropped Sadao's arm as they both leaned over the railing of the veranda. So you know that both of them had been holding the hands of each other. And now, on account of this sudden problem that had emerged over there, they dropped the hands of each other. Now they saw him again. So, leaning over the railing of the balcony. They just leaned over the railing of the balcony. And they just tried to guess it out who that person was. They just tried to guess it out what that thing was. कि उन्होंने ये पता लगाने की कोशिश की, समझने की कोशिश की आखिर ये है क्या. Now they saw him again. The man was on his hands and knees crawling. So by this time the person was crawling. He was not walking on his legs, rather he had been crawling on his four limbs, कि वो ऐसे दोनों हाथों और दोनों पैरों पर ऐसे रेंग करके चल रहा था, as he was not able to stand up properly. As the person was not able to stand up properly, he was just creeping, he was just crawling on his four limbs. That is what you have been told up to now. Then they saw him fall on his face and lie there. And then finally the person became unconscious and he just lied down on his face, कि वो अपने मुंह के बल लेट गया. इस तरीके से वो बेहोश होकर के गिर पड़ा. तो ये बात आपने यहां तक देखी. A fisherman perhaps, Sadao said, washed from his boat. So that was the initial guess of Dr. Sadao and Hana. They thought that probably this is a fisherman who has been fallen out of his ship, and somehow either he has been injured or there is some other problem on account of which he is not able to walk, and that is how he is crawling and he has fallen on the doorstep. That is what they initially guessed out, कि ये शुरुआती दौर में उनको लगा कि शायद कोई ये फिशरमैन है कि जो कि अपनी बोट से गिर गया और शायद चोट वोट खा गया है, तो इस वजह से ये चल नहीं पा रहा है और ऐसे ये यहाँ पे पहुंच गया. He ran quickly down the steps and behind him Hana came. So as they were doctors, they just rushed downward in order to help out that person. They just rushed downward as they were full of the spirit of a true doctor. They came forward to rescue that person. वो उसको बचाने के लिए दौड़ पड़े. तो डॉक्टर सदाव और उनके पीछे पीछे उनकी वाइफ हाना दोनों दौड़ पड़े. Her white sleeves flying. So by this time Hana was wearing something like a nightie or some kind of other loose night dress that had got wide sleeves, and the sleeves were flying. That is what you have been told here. A mile or two away, on the either side, there were fishing villages. So the guess that they had made about the identity of that person was that probably he is a fisherman. And that particular guess was based on the fact that on either side there were fishing villages. So it was not anything strange. It was quite possible that any fisherman might have fallen out of his boat and he has come over here. That kind of a guess was not wrong on the basis of the preliminary inspection. But here was only the bare and lonely coast, dangerous with rocks. So that particular area where Dr. Sadav had been living, that particular area of the beach where Dr. Sadav's house was constructed, there were dangerous rocks. So it was also assumed, it was also presumed that the man might have been hurt in his unconsciousness on account of the rocks. कि ये possible है कि हो सकता है कि rocks वगैरह से उसको कुछ चोट चपेट लग गई हो, तो इसीलिए वो दौड़े कि उसकी मदद की जाए, क्योंकि उनको लगा कि ये शायद किसी नेबरहुड विलेज का कोई फिशरमैन है. This surf beyond the beach was spiked with rocks. So what you have been told here, children? This surf means the leathery sea water, झाग वाला समुद्र का पानी. So that surf beyond the beach was spiked with rocks. That means that leathery sea water was embedded with rocks. That means the beach, the outline of the beach was embedded with rocks. So that is something very common, and that is something that you also might have seen at the beaches. कि जैसे आप मरीन ड्राइव को याद करिए तो वहाँ पे कई आकार वाले पत्थर जो है वो किनारे किनारे लगे हुए हैं, तो वो क्या करते हैं कि वेव्स की फोर्स को तोड़ देते हैं, उसको कम कर देते हैं, कि जिससे जो मरीन ड्राइव का इलाका है, वो जो सर्किल है जिसे क्वींस नेकलेस कहा जाता है, वो डैमेज ना हो. तो इस तरीके का अरेंजमेंट किया जाता है. तो नेचुरली भी कई बार जो है बीच के ऊपर पत्थर पाए जाते हैं और कई बार आर्टिफिशियली भी पत्थरों को सेट किया जाता है. तो दैट इज द सेम थिंग दैट यू हैव बीन टोल्ड हियर, दैट द सर्फ बियॉन्ड द बीच वाज स्पाइक्ड विद रॉक्स, दैट बियॉन्ड द बीच वेयर द सी वाटर वाज फ्लोइंग, that particular area was embedded with rocks that had got big rocks embedded upon it. कि वहां पे काफी बड़े बड़े पत्थर गड़े हुए थे. Somehow the man had managed to come through them. So definitely, as long as the man was conscious, he must have been able to take care of those rocks that were embedded there, and he might have been able to save himself from getting hurt badly. Yet to a great extent it can be hoped that the man must have been injured, कि अपने आप को बचाते बचाते भी वो कहीं ना कहीं उन रॉक से चोट खा गया होगा, इस बात को एज्यूम किया जा सकता था. They saw when they came toward him that indeed it was so. So means as they approached that person, they noticed that indeed it was so, that definitely the man had been hurt by the rocks. So as long as he was conscious, he must have tried to save himself. But still you cannot say that he must have been fully conscious. He must have been in some kind of semi-consciousness. So definitely he would have tried to save himself, yet he would have been hurt on account of striking onto the rocks. कि उस सेमी कॉन्शियसनेस में, उस अर्ध मूर्छित अवस्था में वो कहीं ना कहीं पत्थरों से टकरा टकरा करके उसको चोट लगी हुई थी. ये बात उन लोगों ने देखी जब वो उसके नजदीक गए. The sand on one side of him had already a stain of red soaking through. So the sand of the beach on one side was having a stain of red. That means that the person was bleeding. कि ये समझा जा सकता था कि उस आदमी का खून बह रहा था. तो ये बात आपने यहां तक देखी बच्चों. He is wounded, Sadav exclaimed. So Dr. Sadav said urgently that the person is wounded and that is why he must be helped out. He made haste to the man, and just in order to rescue that person, Dr. Sadav made haste to him. He ran forward to help out that person. His face in the sand, and for time being, the man was lying on his face, and his face had been stuck in the sand. कि उसका चेहरा बालू में धंसा हुआ था. An old cap stuck to his head, soaked with seawater. And then in the meantime, they also noticed that the man was wearing a cap, and that cap was also soaked with sea water. कि उन्होंने क्या देखा कि उस आदमी के सर पे एक कैप लगी हुई है और वो भी सी वाटर में भीगी हुई है. He was in wet racks of garments, and the person was wearing wet rag of garments. So rag of garments is a little bit of reference to the fact that the clothes were probably torn, कि शायद उसके कपड़े फटे हुए थे, इसीलिए यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है rag of garments. तो ये माना जा सकता है कि कपड़े फटे हों, तो ये लिखा हुआ है कि rag of garments. तो इस तरीके से उसने कुछ चीथड़े भी पहन रखे थे जो कि पानी में भीगे हुए थे. Sadao stopped Hannah at his side and turned the man's head. So then they just turned over the body of that person. They just turned over, मतलब पलटना, उसको पलटा. They saw the face. A white man, Hannah whispered. So now Hannah was shocked. She was completely taken aback, realizing that the person was a white man, that he is probably a European or probably an American. So that was really something that was going to compel their wonder कि ये अमेरिकन यहाँ पे कहाँ से आ गया, ये यूरोपियन टाइप का पर्सन यहाँ पे कहाँ से आ गया. तो इस तरीके से वो काफ़ी भौचक्के रह गए. Yes, it was a white man. So now Dr. Sadawa and Hannah had been able to well recognize the identity of that person. They had been able to conclude it out that this person must be an American. The wet cap fell away, and there was his wet yellow hair, long, as though for many weeks it had not been cut. So, on making a notice of the appearance of the person, they realized that he was having blonde hair. So, on the basis of all these points, to a great extent, they were sure that this person must be an American. He was having that kind of a blonde hair that generally the Americans have. And the hair was long also, as if the haircut had not been done for a long time. And upon his young and tortured face was a rough yellow beard. So the person was also having rough yellow beard. So on the basis of all these points, putting two and two together, कि कड़ियाँ जोड़ करके उनको ये समझ में आने लगा था कि शायद ये कोई prisoner of war है जो कैप्टिविटी से भाग निकला है. He was unconscious and knew nothing that they did for him. So that person, whosoever he might have been, he was quite unconscious and he did not know whatever was being done to him by the doctors. कि उसको इस बात का जरा भर भी पता नहीं था अपनी बेहोशी में कि ये लोग उसको बचाने के लिए क्या कुछ कर रहे हैं. उसे इस बात का जरा भर भी अंदाजा नहीं था. Now, Sadao remembered the wound, and with his expert fingers, he began to search for it. So earlier they had been busy guessing out the identity and nationality of that person. कि पहले तो वो इस चीज़ में बिजी हो गए कि आखिर ये कौन है, कहाँ से आया है, इन सब चीज़ों को गेस आउट करने में. But now Sadao remembered his wound. But then all of a sudden Dr. Sadao was reminded of the wound that the person had as it was bleeding. And with his expert fingers, he began to search for it. So as he was a very expert doctor, he just took no time to find out where the wound was. कि वो जख्म कहाँ पे था उसने तुरंत पता लगा लिया. Blood flowed freshly at his touch. So as he touched the wound, blood flowed freshly. Once again, it had started bleeding. Sadao saw that a gun wound had been reopened. So it was a kind of gun wound. The flesh was blackened with powder. So it was a gun wound and the flesh means उसके इर्द गिर्द का जो मांस होता है, तो that flesh had been blackened with gunpowder. So that had been blackened on account of the poison of gunpowder. कि जो बारूद होता है उसके जहर से वो एरिया जो है वो काला पड़ गया था. That is what Dr. Sadao noticed. Sometime, not many days ago, the man had been shot and had not been tended. So now Dr. Sadao was able to realize it that the man had been shot in his back while he was running away. And the wound has not been tended. The wound has not been taken care of. And that is how it has become really dangerous. It was bad chance that the rocks had struck the wound. And the same wound had been struck by rocks. कि उसी घाव पे एक और घाव लग गया था कि जो वो रॉक्स की वजह से लग गया था कि पहले से ही घाव था, उसके ऊपर और जख्म लग गया था रॉक्स की वजह से, उससे टकराने की वजह से. तो इस तरीके से यू कैन से दैट द पर्सन वाज रियली वेरी बैडली इंजर्ड एंड नाउ इट वाज only within the capacity of Dr. Sadao to save his life, and that is what he worked for.